Oh no, it's have a good class. Good meeting. Hello, Lupe. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Never better.
Looking at the phonology study guide.
Yes.
And I couldn't get this one. This one right here.
Well, say it. Just say it slowly. What does this sound there? That's an air, right? So
Tag with phonics.
that's it.
But like, I don't even know what that is.
Look it up in the dictionary.
And this one was in the,
Telephonic, yeah.
this,
Yeah.
this is the syllable.
That's a syllable at the beginning of the syllable, yeah.
Okay, so it goes beginning of the syllable, that's when this.
Right in there, this thing is gonna happen right in there in front of the vowel, the stress vowel.
What happens?
But at the beginning of the, so you think of the word pit,
Yeah.
right? Then you think of the word spit. The P doesn't aspirate with spit, but it does with pit. That's the difference. We're gonna spread out a little bit, so maybe move over one more seat. Okay. If we can get that far. Hi! Cynthia, not Christina. You could change your name and make my life easy. What's wrong with that? What is wrong with that? I had a lady in my class last semester whose last name was Chet. C-H-E-K. Couldn't be much simpler than that. But she got married to an Indian guy. And it changed out to, I don't remember now, could be Govinandam or something. Geez. That's the hard way to go. Oh, better set up.
It's not going to make sense. Well, like, you rarely use those.
That's true. But if you ever have to, now you know how to do it like me. That's it. You've been getting better than that, buddy. You need. Man. start that around later. Give them about 10 minutes or something. We try to get everybody on there all at once.
I'm okay.
With a lot.
I was wondering, and the I guess they came up with this thing called where they said balls for walking the person.
No, it's a real good rule. The second one doesn't talk,
Right, yeah, the first one doesn't talk.
actually, I've used something similar to that when I talked to students trying to learn how to pronounce words from reading. So usually if you have two vowels together, it's the first, it's the name of the first. If you could maybe sit back one row, we're gonna try to spread up, not you. We're gonna, actually, you can stay there too, but you can sit back one more row. I'm just gonna try to spread people out till we get to the, test. I don't think anybody would cheat, but I used to know this guy in Israel whose name was Shimon, and he used to always yell at me because he would say, because I'd leave my briefcase in his office or something left open, he'd say, the person who allows somebody to be tempted is worse than the person who succumbs to the temptation. And so he would always yell at me over and over again. So that just gives you extra breathing. You would have a class much closer now than you used to. All of a sudden you're here on time. Hard to cope with that. But it's wonderful. Which a lot of times is kind of looking at some of the rules that we talked about. There were a couple times we covered the rules in on a PowerPoint. And so a number of those kind of came up here. And then there was one that Harpod had asked about that I tried to explain. I'm not sure I've explained it well yet. However, let's go with that. So we look at this first one. We've got what is the morphological principle for each of the following errors? Mouthful versus mouthful. What happened there? Diana, we'll start with you. What happened with that one? Mouthful versus mouthful. And which one? And specifically? Oh, okay, so that's a good way to say it. Roots and derivations, then if you're going to have any, the inflection has to come last, right? Excellent. So essentially that one was the inflection should have been last. How about Sebastian? What about 1B? Loveting or love or loving? What's wrong with that? Loveting, but other than the fact that it doesn't make a word, but how do we know it can't be a word? That'd be a question too, but what's wrong with loveting? Yes, the inflection part. What about the inflection part? No, inflections never come at the beginning. Inflections are always the last thing, if there is one. Here, how many inflections do we have? 2. How many are we allowed? 1. Okay, cool. See, hand signal. You need, there you go. Sign language and stuff. Okay, cool. Okay. Lorraine, what is wrong with rodent or road or ridden? That's okay. What do you think it is? It's an inflection. That's correct. What about road? Isn't that ride in the past tense? Which would kind of indicate we've got 2 inflections there. One of them is irregular. The other one is the EN inflection, right? So we can only have how many? Oh, 1. Okay, great. There we go. Ashley. Photographer, photographer versus photographer. What's wrong? Yeah, what's wrong with photographer? The photographer. Yeah, the inflection part. Okay, we're cool. We're running on. We're cooking with gas when it comes to inflection. But what's wrong with it? Nope. Actually, that's a good one because you remember ER sometimes is derivational. If we attach it to the end of a verb, if we attach it to an adjective, however, then it's inflectional, but it's derivative if we attach it to something that could be a verb, like photograph. I am going to photograph you because I am a photographer. Then I got an S in there. What's wrong with the S? Are you tired of me bothering you now? You want me to move on? You want me to give you a signal? Because it's not enough. Okay. No, that won't work. The S is in the wrong place because the ER is a derivational morpheme and the S is plural, inflectional. Inflections always come last. Okay? How about this one? 2 coffee blacks instead of for 2 coffees black.
That's the phrase.
I'm sorry.
The phrase.
It's the phrase. Yes, you're right. We're trying to take a plural and attach it to a noun phrase, but the plural should be attached to the noun, right?
Mhm.
Excellent. Very good. The last 6 Queen of England had sons. The last 6 Queen of England had sons. Queens of England. Why? Well, the England is the end of a noun phrase. We put the plural on the end of the The noun, not the noun phrase. I know this is kind of cryptic because you're going to end up seeing noun phrases much more when you get into 310. But the fact is, the last six Queen of England really is the last six Queens of England. But when we get down to the last one, this is for Jen. The girls down the street bike was stolen. What should it be?
It should be, I don't know the double.
Cool,
The-
me too.
The girls bike down the street was stolen. But.
That's not bad. That's actually, that would fix it.
Mhm.
But I don't think it actually says exactly the same thing. That makes it sound like it was stolen down the street, the girl went here.
Fine.
Here's the deal, and this is one you probably have tripped over even when you're talking regularly. This is where we should be putting the possessive attaches to the noun phrase. And in this case, the noun phrase is the girl down the street. So the girl is singular in both cases, but the plural is, I'm sorry, the possessive gets marked at the end of the noun phrase. What is the noun? Well, the noun is the girl, but what does down the street do? Well, it's identifying the girl. So in point of fact, it is a part of the noun phrase.
It has to ask for some part of it.
Yeah, after down the streets.
Streets, but that's.
Yep, it seems kind of strange, but I think when you say it in another context, when you really talk about it, a lot of us probably trip over this. Let's go here, let's go there, but that's what they're doing there. Okay, now I'm gonna go to the hard one. Consider the following forms from Uganda, a language spoken in Uganda. We've got Omuzaki, Omusawa, Omusiku, Omuwala, and Omulenzi for woman, doctor, hair, girl, boy. But we have Abazaki, Abasawa, Abasika, Abawala, and Abalenzi when it's women, doctors, hairs, girls, and boys. What's the difference between those two columns besides the Omu and the Aba? The what? No, it's not the suffixes. The suffixes are the same. It's the prefixes that actually differ, right? We've got Omu and then Zaki or Aba Zaki. What's the difference between woman and women? Yeah, so that whole right column there is plural. What do we notice about those? They always start with Aba. And the left column is all singular. It always starts with Omus. So unlike English and Spanish, where we put an S at the end of the word, in this particular language, they use a prefix. And it seems rather strange, but it's Omu and Aba. So what type of affixes are shown? Well, they're bound because they're not standing alone, right? They are prefixes. And in other languages, while English always has suffixes as inflections, they're saying that this is an inflection. Less important than the fact that you pick out Omu and Aba are bound affixes, and the form that for each would be Omu is singular and Aba is plural. And if I asked you, assume that Aba Longo means twins, how would you say one twin? Nearly you, buddy. Longo. Very good. See, you didn't know you were multi-talented, multilingual. I once saw a TV show where a guy goes looking at a couple of Russians and it goes, "Wow, you guys speak two languages." And the guy says, "Yeah, it's called bilingual." You know what they call somebody who speaks one language? American. Okay, anyway, on we go. That's not as funny as my cannibal joke, but okay. 3, Isabel. I didn't call you that. Am I good? Do I get Could I ask you something? Cool. Here we've got something similar. This is from Kanuri, a language in Nigeria. Ghana is small, but Nungana is smallness. Kura is big, but Nunkura is bigness. What type of affix do you see there? No, it's turning it from an adjective. Without the noon, small is an adjective. What is smallness? Exactly. So what type of affix? It's bound again, right? It's not standalone. In this case, it is a suffix. No, sorry, it's still a prefix. And num means something to change it over to a noun. That's C and D. And assume numgula means goodness. What is the likely form for good?
Gula.
Gula. Right. These aren't all that hard, right? You just got to look for the patterns, and language is like all patterns. Oh, okay. Here we go. Arpod. A sign in Jimmy John's shop reads, bigger, faster, deliciouser. What's wrong? Why? Oh, you can't do that because to a non-English speaker, it sounds perfectly reasonable. Got an idea? This one's tricky. Oh, okay. Well, I may never have said it in either. So, do you know? You don't? Here's the deal. Most of the time, almost always, if you're going to put ER or ESP on the end of an adjective, it's going to have either one syllable or it's going to have two syllables, and the second one ends with a Y. So you got pretty, two syllables, prettier. Delicious, already got three, so that's out of the park, but it doesn't end in a Y either. So it can't be delicious. It ends up being what? More delicious. Okay, that work? Okay, cool. All right, so that's what's there. Now, what I would like to do is I want to go over the trees. I have them written up here so we can do it relatively quickly. Let's see, we left off with Arpod. Then Lupe gave us an answer. That gets us over to Lupe again, because we're going to make you two. How would we draw the tree for practice? What did you think? First off, we got to mark the root, right? What is the root? Huh? It could be a noun or a verb, right? We can go to practice or we can practice. So it could be a noun or a verb. But the point is the whole word is the root, right? I can't really break off anywhere in there. I can't get correct. And even if I were to think of practical, that's probably practice with AL added on. So in this case, see, we've just got one syllable and one morpheme. You draw a straight line up and label it. Does that make sense? Because there's no extra parts. Let's get over the telephone. What would you call it? See, Lupe did that one. Christina, what would you say is the root for telephone?
Phone.
Okay, great. I agree with that. Now, is that a verb or a noun? Could be either one, right? Because I can phone you and I can pick up the phone. So we'll just go ahead and mark it this way. It doesn't really matter. And then we've got this as an affix. And then we want to connect them. How do we connect them? It's not my pacemaker going bad, so don't worry. How do we do it? We have to connect the two, right?
Phone and bell.
Right? And so what we've done is we've taken phone, we've added tele on it, and then suddenly we still have a noun or a verb because it could really be either one. On the test, if you tell me one that's correct, I don't care that you give me all the possibilities, just give me something that's real. Here's a trickier one. Cynthia, lucky you. what do you think is the root for electricity? That's a pretty good guess, and most of the time I would agree with you, but I'm beginning to think there's something different. No, I don't think it's going to be a Lex, but that's a good shot at it. But I think it's going to be a lector because we've got things like electrons, electromagnetic. So I'm kind of thinking the elector is it. But if on the test I had electricity, you chose electric, I'd live with it because that seems more obvious. But I'm not sure what this is, but it's probably going to be something like a noun. And then I've got it, and then I've got itty, right? Where do we go next? Very good. And so when we do electric, what kind of word does that make? A what? Nope. Yes. And then what do we do? Sure, it's going to pick up the itty, right? And now what do we have? Now we got it. Okay, so pretty straightforward. The trick is finding the root. Like I said on this one, a lot of people will pull up electric because that's the one that's kind of obvious, but I think it's more like electric. Okay, I'm going to skip unlockable for a minute. Let's go over the inexpensive galley. You believe that? Would you agree with it probably now? Then, okay, so we've got two affixes. We've got a prefix. We've got a suffix. What do we do first? What do we combine? Expense and if, right? Because you don't know any word of inexpense, right? So we have to pick something that's going to actually be a word. That is going to be an adjective. Then what do? Then you connect in expensive, and that is what? That's also. I love it. Okay. Here, oh, Selma. Oh, Selma. Selma. This one's going to be tough. Optionality. Another word that you may never have heard of, but it's a perfectly good word. Optionality. Where would we start? What do you think is the root? Pretty good guess, but I'm going to say it's not really option. It's nope. Less. You may not even use the word. Anybody got a guess for me? I'm sorry? No, because that's even bigger than option. Opt. Very good. See, this one's kind of tricky because opt is a verb. I'm going to opt out of this, or I'm going to opt into that. So that's a verb. Then I've got this Iowan affix. And then I've got this affix. And then I've got this affix. So, okay, Selma, so we've got the optionality out there. We've got it broken into its pieces. What's our next step? Connecting. Very good. We're going to connect the root with the next affix that will still give us a word. And it'll be the one next to it, if we're going to do it at all. So this one's going to be a noun, right? And then what do we do? Well, pretty straightforward. What do we do next? We do. And what kind of word is that? Anybody? Adjective. And then what do? We got the last one, right? So all we got to do is pick up that. What kind of a word is optionality? It is a noun. Okay. There we go. Now, you got those so far? all straightforward. You find the root and label it. You label the affixes that are there. That's probably those are the two tricky parts. Then you start connecting pieces that are right together. You can't cross and jump one. You got to connect it to something that's right next to it. Sometimes it's in front, sometimes it's in back, but what you're going to end up with is a word. And then you continue to do that all the way up to the top, right? Real straightforward, very few, there's no real exceptions to it. It's just like that. All right, so let's take this guy and do it. Well, anybody want to tell me the root on this one? Nation, exactly. Kind of word? Noun, right? We've got anti in the front. Everybody knows that's a prefix. Oh, a lot like that one over there is another affix. And then we've got ism, another one. Great. Is that looking good? Where do we start? What are the first two things that connect? Anti-nation or national? Anti-nation or national? Well, I know it's one of those. Okay. Isabel's telling me, yeah, it's one of those. Which one?
National.
National. Nobody's ever heard the word anti-nation, I don't think. National, though, is a perfectly good word. And that goes from a noun to a. Huh? I heard somebody say something. Say it with confidence. Okay. You're absolutely right, right? A national pride. So that's telling, modifying pride. What's next? Want to keep going? No. Adriana, you want to go. I could see it in your eyes because I can't see anything but your eyes. So, nationalism. You hear about that all the time on the news, right? So suddenly we've gone from noun to adjective to nationalism, which is a noun. And then what? And then anti. What do you think that is? Anti-nationalism. It's still unknown. Very good. All right. Everybody good? Have I really freaked anybody up? Okay, all right. I want to make sure I didn't leave you out. Are we good? Just need a little practice. If you still need a little practice, go back and look at those two short videos that showed a bunch of them get done. And look at on the front page of that, on the first part of that, it's got the 4 steps. Same thing over and over and over again. Okay, but I have one that is tricky. And this happens occasionally. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say this is a verb, this is an affix, and this is an affix. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say, well, guess what? It doesn't change here. It's still. And are we right so far? Everything's good, right? Yeah. Your question. You don't trust me. Look at this. Look at the ears, my Dumbo ears. That's my favorite part. Okay. Anyway. All right. So I'm going to go in here and say, can I connect on and lock? Because you can unlock something, right? Cool. And if I get that, I go like this, and it's still a verb, and then I go like this, and I pick this up, and now it becomes an adjective. What does it mean? Well, it means it's something that I can unlock, right? I can unlock it. We good? Down here, though, can I also say lockable? That door is lockable. Is that a good word? It is, right? I would lie to you, right? So if I do that, I'm going to take like this, and I'm going to go from a verb to a lockable. You look at what kind of word do you think it is now? And then what I've got is this. which then says it's still an adjective. Now, in both cases, it ends up being an adjective, but notice that they mean something different. This one starts with unlock, and it says, I am able to lock. Right? Unlock, able to unlock. Down here, though, I got a little different. I've got something able to be locked. But in this case, it's not able. The unchanges it. So not able to be locked. You notice how they're a little bit different? I mean, we've strung them together differently. This is something that can really screw up your students. We can think about it as undoable. It's another good example. Do, doable, undo, and then I can undo it or it is not doable at all. So, as you think about working with English language learning students, it's important to start recognizing that, as I've said several times, the reason behind studying morphology is so that we can see words. We can expand our vocabulary very greatly by using prefixes and suffixes. And that's why this one's pretty important. Now, we have one last part of this to go. And it is the idea of word formation. You remember I said morphology is the study of how words are formed or changed. We've talked a lot about how we can change them and change the meaning, but we also have some ways of actually creating new words. So that's what we're going to talk about first today. Okay? So the homework for 310, I know you're going to have the test, but I want you to do one exercise. It's just exercise I, number 1 and number 2. Okay? Now, you don't have to do all of them. You really want to do recognize that the homework for then is also that we're going to finish up the remainder of the exam. Okay? That's the homework. So exercise I, numbers 1 and 2, and be ready for the exam. So let's start talking about how do we form and make words. I want you to go back to the 15th century. And when you had a bunch of wood burning, what would you call that? You would call it fire. Oh, damn, I didn't want you to go that far. The actual yellow and blue and white stuff floating is called, all right, so fire. But then comes along the, I don't know, the 1890s or the 1880s, and suddenly we also have trucks. And what if we never had? So we came up with a new word. This was a truck. It's meant for dealing with fires. What is the word I'm thinking of? Oh, yes, God. Okay, let's go. So we go from suddenly we've gone from fire, which is a word we've had forever, and truck, which is relatively new. And now we actually combine those two things into a single word so that we know that we've got a fire truck, right? That's the idea of compounding. Ever since you were in the first grade, I am absolutely certain that you've been dealing and learning about compound words. Little did you know that compound words have anything to do with morphology, but you won't be able to say that tomorrow. We are going to take two lexical morphemes, two words, put them together to get a new word. Fire and truck, fire truck. Here's some other examples. Oh, let's see. Fire truck, I already used that one. Sand and a box. Well, we've had sand forever and boxes forever, but probably what's only the last 100 years when we give our kid a sandbox. Here's a strange one. I want you to think about cowboy. That seems to me to be a compound word all by itself. But I'm also going to try to convince you that the word cowboy hat is a compound word. And I'm going to tell you why in just a couple of minutes. Okay? But I'm going to say that even though this isn't actually two words pushed together, you can actually think of it as a compound word. And there are others that work that way. So We could take nouns and take two nouns together and add them together, come up with a new word. We could take an adjective and a noun, and we could end up with a greenhouse, or a bluebird, or a redneck. In colorful today. Greenhouse, bluebird, and redneck. You see how those are all compound words? And in fact, in this case, they're common, and they're something you're used to, and the fact that they're two words pushed together into one, no space. We could take prepositions, and we could end up with an afterthought, after and thought. Or we could take something like a suit. This is Hillary Clinton. Jumpsuit. She probably did. That would have been considered a tip. Okay, jumpsuit. I'm going to take jump, which is a verb, and a noun, suit, and suddenly I've got the word jumpsuit. Right? Are you following me? Nothing new here at all, right? Nothing new here at all. So I could show you a bunch of other ones, like we could take verbs and we could take spoon, which is a noun, and feed and make it spoon feed. Now we've got a compound verb. Or drop and kick, we've got drop kick as a compound verb. We also have adjectives. I can take a noun like nation, and I can take an adjective like wide, and I can push those two things together, and I end up with nationwide, which is a new adjective, right? It's not two different words. Interestingly, red hot, overripe, both of those work. And so what you see here on this page, and most of what you saw over here, was what you're already used to. With this exception here, you see a bunch of words that are pushed together, no space, it's two or three words come together, okay? That's the typical way we've always learned about compound words. But I want you to know that there's actually, it's a little more complicated than that. And so sometimes they're hard to distinguish because in English, sometimes we join the two words together like we did with cowboy, and everything's fine, everybody knows it's a compound word. Sometimes we hyphenate the word, like we do in mother-in-law. I don't know why we didn't just jam it all together and go mother-in-law, but for some reason, they broke it up into three parts and they hyphenated them. This is something that comes in pretty common. But we also have some where they are completely separate. Where does Joe Biden live? The White House. Notice the accent I did there. Joe Biden lives in the White House. See me jumping up with it. So it's not out of excitement. White House. It is showing the accent though. You know where I live? I live in a White House. Now, in Joe Biden's case, White House, same two words, is considered a compound word. But in my case, it's an adjective, white, with a noun, house, right? The trick is actually listening to it and hearing it with your ear. Okay, here are a number of other examples. I can go scuba diving and wear a wetsuit. Hear that? Wetsuit. Or I could go stand in the rain and find out that I'm wearing a wetsuit. Hear it? Does everybody hear the difference? A wetsuit and a wetsuit. Right? Same thing goes with blackboard. Blackboard is where I write, even though it's brown. Blackboard. But I could also get a piece of wood painted black and I would have a black board. Or I could put plants in a greenhouse, or I could live in a green house. So it's actually really quite clear when you're looking at some of these compounds that what you're going to do is if it's an adjective with a noun together, it's going to be accented on the first syllable. If it's an adjective with a house, like White House, it's the other way around. Okay, mother-in-law. It's not a mother-in-law unless you're Herman Herman. Anybody know Herman Herman? Anybody know the song? Mother-in-law? was okay back in the 60s before your parents were born. All right. Now, that is compounding. So that's an important one. We make compounds all the time. We know we're a Germanic language. German does it to the extreme. Next, we're going to have something that we're going to call category extension. Category extension. That's where we're going to take some word that is a particular part of speech, and we're going to change it to a new part of speech, and it will mean something different. Okay? We're going to take something that is a part of speech, and we're going to change it to another one, meaning something different. I got a bunch of examples. Table is a noun, right? This is a table. But if you're in a meeting and you table an issue, what did you do? What did table mean? Put it off to the side, put it on the back burner. But most importantly, in that case, table is a verb. Exactly. How about chair a meeting? Whoever's in charge of the meeting chairs the meeting, but chair is just a simple noun. For some reason, we've also said the chairman. I don't know whether in the old days only the chairman got to sit in the chair or what, but now we call it chairing the meeting. Up the ante. Up. Oh, that's great. But up the ante is another verb. Dirty the floor, adjective to a verb. Man, he's gonna dirty the floor, walking around the house with mud on. And then we've got some newer ones like text me. Text is a noun, but text me is a verb phrase. And email was a noun, but it's become a verb as well. So category extension is another one where we see it happening a lot. And basically, we're taking one thing, changing it to another. Friend in the Facebook world. Friend was always a noun. Suddenly, it's a verb. Because we can not only friend somebody, but we can unfriend them. So it's a verb. Category extension. And I will say that on some of these, and this is another case where we have a difference in accent. I went to the dentist and I got an implant. I went to the brain surgeon and I got an implant. But what he did to me was he implanted. So suddenly I've got this difference again. An implant is a noun, but implant is a verb. Here's a great one. You've seen this a million times on television. I have an object in my hand, but the lawyer is going to object to it. So these are very common with noun and verb changes. Import. My car is an import because the dealer decided to import it. Got it? And contest and contest. Different meanings, but different pronunciation, right? Otherwise, it's exactly the same word. So you, as an English speaker, go in there and read that, and you know what it sounds like because you're kind of used to that. You can tell from the context, but your students won't be able to. And so sometimes they've got to be helped along, like in a pronunciation point. Okay, so category extension is a good one. Now we've got something called clipping. Clipping. We're going to take a word that has multiple syllables. We're going to chop part of it off. I remember teaching a bunch of Chinese students one time. I had a whole bunch of Chinese students who were learning pronunciation. I had to teach them the Three Blind Mice song. They just couldn't believe it. Why would they do it? Chop off their tails. Life experience. Okay. Nonetheless, give me a place where we take a polysyllabic word, that means a multiple syllable word, and we shorten it. Lorraine, give me an example. Think of the fun. Think of the word mouth. No. say no. It's perfectly valid. But it leaves it with Ashley. Now it's Ashley's problem. Oh, please. Did anybody call you anything other than Ashley? What did you just do? What did you just do? Check it right there. We do that a lot with names, right? Now, John, you can't shorten it to Ja, but we do it all the time with things like Joe, which should have been Joseph, Sue, which should have been Susan, and Pete, which should have been Peter. We do it all the time there. We have others. Hey, how about this one? Prof. Have you ever called a professor your prof? If you haven't, you should have, but let's assume that you did because you could. Hamburger. Change it to a burger. We chopped off the ham. Auto. What is that for? Automatic is one way of thinking about it. How was another way? Auto. Oh, she got manic. You gotta get the other one.
Chef.
Auto.
Auto call.
Auto.
Mechanic, right?
Okay, auto mechanics, that's cool, but probably more like automobile, right? We call it an auto, although the rest of us all call it cars. Dock. Deli. Come on, you live in the city, you've got to know what a deli is. Delicatessen. Right? You don't agree with anything. Okay, fine. Delicatessen. Blog. I don't like that one. I'm almost going to take that blog off of it. Defrag. Defrag. What does defrag mean? Oh, yeah. You guys are young. You don't have to do this on your computers anymore. It's defragmentized, but it's basically, or defragment. It's basically a thing we used to have to do on old PCs to go in and compress all the files together because they get broken up into little pieces all over the place. Okay, you got the idea of flipping? Click, 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 click. There's another one that's kind of similar, and it would be, I think it's talked about in your book, it's back formation. It would be something where you chop off a morpheme and you come up with a different word, like bulldozer. You know what a bulldozer is, right? Everybody's a bulldozer, you got a big bulldozer. And some people will take off the ER thinking, hey, we should call that, the action is bulldozing. Okay, we can do that. That would be back formation, but clipping is good enough for now. Blend is something that you probably know. Non-morphemic, so we're not taking full morphemes, non-morphemic parts of a couple of words and put them together. Isabel? You ever go out to eat at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning? Really?
Oh, Sunday.
It's not Sunday morning, it's the order there. It's something else that you eat on Sunday morning at 11, maybe 12.
Brunch.
Brunch. Exactly. We take the BR off of breakfast, so it's not a morphine, right? It's just supplementary. And the lunch off of lunch, and we end up with brunch. Okay? So that one is a very common thing. We have smog, which is smoke and fog put together. We've got telethon, which is probably a telephone in the marathon. Yes. Okay. Yep. Fridge. That'd be a good example. Yep. It doesn't, we're just chopping off at least one. So fridge is a perfectly good example because we're throwing away a whole bunch of pieces. Good point. Think of that one. I'm going to replace blog with that. Because blog could probably figure up under here. It's a web log. And so I should have put it on this one. But smog, telethon, and who knows what the channel is? Somebody has to know the channel. Wait, look, you don't know which. Anybody? It's in England. Between France and England. Yes, it's called the Channel Tunnel or the Channel, right? It's the tunnel that goes, they dug underneath the English Channel to connect Britain to continental Europe. I wouldn't want to ride through it, but a lot of people do. Channel. And then infomercial. What are the words going into infomercial? Arpod, it's up to you. Information and commercial. Exactly. So we've seen these, you see these all of the time. They're around. And we run into them a lot. Now, here's one that's very important. There's two that are very important, and I want you to pay close attention to the difference. All right. The first one is an acronym. Can anybody tell me what an acronym is? Lupe, what's an acronym?
When you take the letter of the word.
You take the initial letters of words in a phrase and as a word, not the letters, but as a word. Can you think of one? Okay. Christina? Okay, well, I'm going to give you a break because I had lots of time to think about it, so it probably makes a difference. AIDS. It's not AIDS, and it's not the plural of the word aid. We take acquired immunodeficient syndrome. I think is what it is. But we don't call it AIDS. What do they call it in Spanish? I know it's SIDA, but I don't know if they call it SIDA or do they call it SIDA? SIDA. What do you think? Anybody? AIDS. What is AIDS in Spanish? Do they call it SIDA, SIDA, or do they not? Don't know. Okay, cool. How about scuba? What did we do? We took the S on self, the C on contained, so self-contained. U is from underwater. B is from breathing, and A is from apparatus. Self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. We don't sit there and say it like that. We don't call it SCUBA. We call it scuba. NATO is another one. That one's in the news all the time. USAR, United States Army, Europe. POTUS. Anybody know what POTUS is? Exactly. President of the United States. POTUS. And how about SINC? Commander-in-Chief. But in certain circles, they'll call it the SINC. And that's basically what they're doing. It's an acronym. Notice, we're taking a bunch of initial letters, but we pronounce it as a word. The next one is a little different. It's again very similar. We're going to take initial letters of several words or a phrase, and we're going to pronounce them spelled out. We aren't going to say POTUS in this case. We would have said POTUS if it were an abbreviation. Now, NEIU is an abbreviation. CIA is an abbreviation. FBI, IRS, NAS, and DOD. All of those are abbreviations because we pronounce them as letters. We don't try to make it a word like DOD or NAS. We actually say the letters. Now, these are abbreviations. Sometimes we can take the initial letters of syllables occasionally and make it into a word. There are two primary examples. I guess I've got three. One is TV, television. We took the T and the B and we call it a TV. You go to England, they don't call it a TV, they call it a telly. EEG, anybody know what that is? Electro. No, that's that one. This one is electroencephalogram. So they're measuring your brain waves. And then we get over here, ECG or EKG, more commonly called EKG, is electrocardiogram, where they monitor your heart. But the idea here is electrocardiogram, different syllables, PV, electroencephalogram. Now, I know people are going to get this confused, and I'm telling you that it's going to be on the test. Something about these will be there. And the last thing I want you to do is pay really close attention to this, because I know a bunch of people are going to do this. Do not do this. Don't give me a bunch of shortened words the way we use them for spelling, okay? We're not shortening the word doctor. When we say it, we still say doctor, right? These are shortened words for spelling purposes. Mr., Mrs., got two Mrs. I like okay. I like the Mrs. Anyway, they're shortened words. We did not create new words by shortening them, right? Doctor is still doctor. If we clipped it, we would have a new word, doc, but we don't. And so do not, okay? You see the boldface underline? What does that mean? Important, do not give me shortened spellings. I'm looking for abbreviations or acronyms for new words. And occasionally you'll find some that could be done both ways, as in ASAP and ASAP. Some people say ASAP and other people say ASAP. Both of them are right, but the first one is an acronym. The second one is an abbreviation. All right. One last thing that we should recognize is we do borrow words from people or from other languages. It's not important to remember this, but I'm going to tell you that this one is French. So a lot of English words actually were borrowed from French. A lot of them were borrowed from Latin, and even more were pulled out of German. Okay. Now we've got all kinds of other little ones up here, like we could talk about tacos, and we could talk about kimchi, and we could talk about, I don't know what else, from all kinds of different languages. But our main sources have been French. Oh, this one's Latin, French, and German with some crossover. Okay, but that's the idea of borrowing. And so we could look at some words and go, where do you think pistol comes from? Everybody wants to say Mexico. No, Czechoslovakia. They stole, Mexicans stole it from the Czechs also. So we got it, you got it. You threw an extra A in. Okay, fine. Polka. Where does the polka come from? You've got the European roots, most recent European roots. Huh. Anybody? It just so happens it also comes from Czechoslovakia, right? It comes from the Czech language. I don't know where they came up with these, but they did. And then we've got bamboo, comes from Malaysia or Indonesia. We've got brackish. Anybody know what brackish means? Where saltwater and freshwater come together and they start to dilute, so you've got kind of nasty salty water. That's brackish. German is where you expect guacamole. Guacamole. Lupe. Huh? Does Mexico have its own language? No. I thought I would trick you. There is one other language that was one of the indigenous languages. Now what? Now what? Oh, you guys put now what? Oh man, we had to put an extra syllable on there. So how smart you were. Anyway, and dingo is that wonderful Australian dog-like creature. The dingoes will eat your baby. Good. So that's where we're at. Now, for the midterm, I don't want you worrying about clipping, back formation, folk etymology, root creation, proper name, where all of those are things that are listed in your book, several of which we've talked about. I'm not going to ask you any questions about those. But the place I want to make sure you recognize is acronyms and abbreviations. I want you to be, you'll be asked to give me some blended words, and you'll probably be asked to give me some borrowed words. Okay? You don't have to use the ones I used as examples. You come up with your own. Breathe. Are we good? Everybody? All right. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and pass out this test. And I'm going to leave it upside down for you for a minute, okay? So I want to make sure that I talk to you before we actually do it. And so I'm going to do like that. So turn them upside down. Next row gets 4. One, two, three, 4. There you go. Okay. This row gets 2. This row gets 1. Turn them upside down. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 15 minutes. Okay? You probably won't take 15 minutes, but I want you to put everything away. You've got the stuff that's got your IPA symbols anywhere. I haven't left them up there. And so the idea here is you're going to fill this out just like they are in the book. Several of them are in the right place. Others, you're going to have to take this group over here and place it in the right spot. And the same thing goes with the second page for consonants. Okay? So, off you go, and as soon as you get done, you're free to leave. Questions? Any questions? Let her rip. I'll let you know when the 15 minutes are there.